just remembered, haven't we, the anniversary of D-Day, and take it for granted now. As we should do, we take things for granted that that war was won and the tangible evil of National Socialism was defeated, but it wasn't always inevitable. It was very challenging. And before the United States came into the war, of course, well, it was really a stalemate, wasn't it? It was very difficult for Britain and its empire to actually win. It could hold the Germans at bay, but to actually win the war. A new book, terrific piece of work, Those Angry Days, about the United States and the Second World War and how and why the Americans, with all of their power and resources, came in. Just been published. Go and buy a copy immediately. Lynne Olson is the author. She's on book tour and she's in Vancouver right now. Lynne, a pleasure. I'm a great fan of your work.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, no, I mean, let's talk about this, because we think of this great coalition of the enlightened, of the good guys who took on Nazism. But the United States, when Britain and Canada were already at war, the United States was by no means convinced it was going to come into the war at all.
That's right. I mean, from 1939, when the war began, to December 1941, the United States was on the sidelines, basically debating endlessly about what to do.
Now, there are a lot of conspiracy theories, of course. Pearl Harbor, it was all Roosevelt's plan. He knew it was going to happen. He wanted it to happen as a reason to enter the war. I don't think that's true. But at that stage, was it surely a matter of time?
You know, I think it was a matter of time. But the question is, how much time did, for example, Britain have? Britain was the last country standing, along with, as you say, Canada and the other Commonwealth countries, against Hitler. And it was really on the ropes in 1940, 1941, and you know, very, very close to being defeated. And if the United States had not come in when it did in December 1941, who knows what would have happened? Who knows whether Britain would have been able to hold out? And if it hadn't been able to hold out, you know, history would have been very different, I think.
Yes, of course. And indeed, Hitler declared war on the United States after Pearl Harbor. He didn't have to do that. I suppose it could have been an American-Japanese conflict at that stage.
That's right. I mean, you know, what's interesting and what I think certainly a lot of Americans don't realize is that we did not declare war on Germany after Pearl Harbor. We only declared war on Japan and waited until Hitler declared war on us.
Now, there was opposition. I can understand some opposition after the First World War, even though the Americans didn't suffer the way European powers did.
Right.
The idea this was a Europe that many of our people had left. We don't want to be involved in their conflicts. But beyond that, there was something more sinister, that there was a support for Nazi Germany. There was a certain degree of anti-Semitism. There were a lot of people of German origin. I'm not saying they were all anti-Semitic or pro-Nazi, but many of those people were severely ambivalent about entering a war against Germany.
Yeah, there were a lot of German Americans in the United States at that time. And many of them were opposed to the idea of the United States going to war, as well as Irish Americans. Irish Americans who, you know, who were very anti-British. Many of them were also not happy about the idea of going to war in an effort to help save Britain. So there was considerable amount of opposition, but it wasn't just hyphenated Americans. I mean, there were a lot of people in the United States in 39, 40, who just, as you said, just didn't think we should get involved in another European war. You know, it's really interesting now. Most Americans think of World War II as the good war, you know, the war we had to get into, the war that was necessary. But back then, the feeling was very, very more different. They looked at it in a very different way.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting about Ireland because almost the entire Irish army, it wasn't that big, but almost the entire Irish army left to go and fight with the British against the Nazis, and there were huge
that's really true. Yeah,
and huge numbers of Irish volunteers. But it may have changed. But certainly since I've been to Ireland, it wasn't that long ago. I don't think there's one statue to the Irishmen who fought and died for the Allies against Nazis in all of Ireland. Charles Lindbergh, national hero, his position, he was opposed to entry into the war until the war started?
That's correct. Yes, he was basically the unofficial leader of the isolationist movement in the U.S. He really believed that we should stay out of war entirely, that what we should do is defend ourselves. If the need arose, that we should be militarily prepared to do that, but we should not get involved in a European war.
What were his motives?
He had been in Germany. He had visited Germany several times in the late 1930s. and was very, very impressed with the German military, particularly the German Air Force. And he basically believed that Germany was unbeatable and that it would be folly for Britain, France, or anybody else to go to war because they would be defeated. And so he basically, thought that the European countries should come to some sort of negotiated settlement with Hitler, and that by all means that the United States should stay out of the conflict completely.
It's extraordinary when you read about the reality, how the Czechs actually were better armed than the Germans, how the French tanks were superior to German tanks in 1939, 1940, but there was so much propaganda of German supremacy that there were countries that had just lost the stomach to actually resist.
But as it turned out, the Germans actually were superior militarily in 1939 to some degree. I mean, the French army was regarded as the best in the world. It really wasn't.
No.
The Germans had really militarized over, from when Hitler came to power until war was declared, but they weren't as unbeatable as Charles Lindbergh thought. No. I mean, he exaggerated, for example, the strength of the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe. They weren't nearly as powerful as he told everybody that they were. Yeah,
I mean, they had no four-engine bombers. Some of their fighters, the Mission at 110 was a bit of a disaster. It was meant to be the Great Saving. It's a fascinating book, and I really believe people have to learn more about this particular period because it did shape certainly United States until the 50s and mid-60s. A great pleasure interviewing you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thanks very much.